As I understand it, because before I was married to Doug, I was married to Dan, with whom I'm still friends. And Dan was a doctor and still is a very successful doctor down in Virginia. And so I was with Dan when he finished medical school, when he went through internship, when he went through residency, when he went through fellowship, was at Hopkins, the whole bit. And I can tell you, just from my perch, it's all very hard. It's all very challenging. And for very good reasons, the professors and the doctors and so on they don't go easy on doctors in training because they want you and me to live when we come under these people's care. And it's very exacting. Not everybody makes it. And that's the way it should be. We don't want everyone to become a Navy SEAL or a doctor or a pilot. We want it to be extraordinary. Well, that was yesterday. At NYU, this professor just got fired because 82 of the 350 students in Maitland Jones Jr.'s organic chemistry class felt it was too challenging. They were upset that organic chemistry was too hard. So instead of looking inward and saying, maybe I should have studied a little harder, why did all the other students manage to get through? Why is it just the 82 of us? These are the losers. These are the dum-dums. These are the people who couldn't hack it. That's the truth. Instead of accepting that or doubling down, they decided to come after this guy, filed a complaint with the university. Here are a couple of the items. I mean, my notes in the margin read, OMG, OMG, barf, snot-nosed children. They are mad because their grades were too low. They were not given grades that would allow them to get into medical school. They were not given grades that would allow them to get into medical school. That he had a condescending and demanding tone, Gad. And that he failed to make their learning and well-being a priority. All right, so what do you make of it? Because NYU fired the guy.
Oh, I've got so much to say about this. First, I'll say you probably know the concept of anti-fragility, which was kind of popularized by a good friend of mine, also Lebanese author Nassim Taleb, in a book that he wrote on anti-fragility, right? I mean, that which doesn't kill you makes you stronger is exactly the colloquial term for anti-fragility, which is we expect to be challenged with stressors. For example, our immune system works best when we are exposed to allergens, right? Kids who grow up with pet dander, who grow up on farms, end up having lesser respiratory ailments than kids who grow up in sterile environments, precisely because your immune system expects to be triggered, right? So I argue in the parasitic mind that our critical thinking expects the same thing. In order for you to develop good critical thinking abilities, you have to be put through the test. So resilience, grit, anti-fragility are truly important things for you to have optimal living. So the idea that something is too hard. Look, I studied mathematics. I studied computer science. I did a thesis in operations research, which is a field in applied mathematics. I never had someone complain that, mathematics was too hard. We had to dumb it down. So this is really a reflection of the zeitgeist that we see today. I'll mention two other quick personal stories. One that just happened recently. So this semester, I'm teaching an undergraduate class on my, evolutionary consumption stuff, and I'm teaching an MBA course, a seminar in consumer behavior. Several students dropped out of the first class, which, I jokingly said when I came into the next week's course, I can't believe that students would drop my course. What kind of irrational decision is that? And then someone said to me, Professor, I don't want you to be offended by this, but a lot of them dropped because you exuded an air of toughness. I said, well, what do you mean? And then he said, well, in your course outline, you clearly stated that you will not alter the schedule of the evaluative exercises to suit every MBA student's idiosyncratic schedule. And a lot of students were offended by that. So I should not say the exam is going to be held on October 12th. I should alter the dates of the exams to fit each student's travel plans. So that was one story that speaks to your point. The second one is one from when I was way back at, so I did my PhD at Cornell, and there's a point at which in your doctorate, you have to do what's called the comprehensive exam. This is where your committee could ask you any question on any of the fields that they're covering. So if I have a professor from statistics who's on my doctoral committee, that professor could ask me anything in statistics, anything in psychology of decision-making. So I walked into that exam thinking that, my committee member, they're very friendly, they're very sweet. Well, I walk in, it was as if I was facing a completely different beast. They were all very curt. They were all quite combative. And then when they asked me to step out of the room so that they can deliberate my fate, and then they asked me back in, everybody was smiley. They congratulated me for having defended my dissertation proposal and so on. So I looked at my supervisor and I said to him, "What the F, Jay?" I actually talk about this in my next book. And he looked at me and smiled and said, "Well, that was just some good old fashioned Ivy League butt kicking. It will make a man out of you." So they weren't there to coddle me. They weren't there to hug me and caress me. They knew that I was going to go on the speaking circuit applying for professorship where the audience was going to be very tough. And so they made sure that they put me through the baptism by fire. And I have nothing but thanks for them today. So those kids that you spoke about at NYU are little whiners.
Yes, and they want to be future doctors. Or there's only one reason to take organic chemistry, and that is because you want to go to medical school. The rest of us sane humans choose never to touch that kind of a subject. So it's used as sort of a weeder. It weeds out the weak historically from those who can make it into medical school and through medical school and as a doctor, and those who cannot. And so if you are one of the loser 82 students who didn't do well in this class, you should take the message accordingly. You're a loser. You can't do it. You should consider another field. Not all of us can do it. I get it. When it comes to medicine, I'm a loser too. I couldn't make that. However, and by the way, I did have a similar experience just in high school where it was the only class I ever got a C in, chemistry. I did well in everything other than that. Chemistry, I got a C in. And you know what I realized? This isn't my thing. I didn't go blame the professor. I didn't say the testing's too hard. I said that I've struggled with this from the beginning. It's not my thing. I get it. These students, Gad, this is to your point about what your students who dropped your class complain about. They're mad that the professor reduced the number of midterm exams from 3 to 2. Flattening their chances to compensate for their low grades. Like he owes them a certain number of tests. By the way, he says that given the schedule of the university, that would have had the first exam be way too soon in the season. They say he didn't offer extra credit. Why must a professor offer extra credit at all? Just get a good grade on the tests that are offered. You're not entitled to a chance for extra. And then they criticized his tone, among other things. And here's what happened. They didn't ask that he be fired, but they wanted this to be addressed. So the university, and the guy, by the way, the professor, Dr. Jones, and 2 others had already taped 52 organic chemistry lectures to make it easier on these kids during the pandemic, saying, "We get it, may be tough for you. You can watch these at any time." He paid $5,000 out of his own pocket so that they could have this. Wasn't enough. They wanted more help, and they kept giving them more help. But this professor saying these students seemed disengaged, they weren't coming to class, they weren't watching the videos, and they weren't able to answer the questions. And so instead of backing their professor, Gad, the university turfed him, noting that the people who pay the bills of who gets into these schools weren't going to like these results. So basically, they're worried about their bottom line and their U.S. News and World Report ranking.
I'll tell you 2 other. Obviously, since I'm a professor, thank you for choosing that topic because I can, of course, speak with great ease about it, although with some pain. I get more nervous, and I'm hardly someone who easily is frazzled. I get more nervous when I have to kind of hold my breath after I post the grades of the semester than I do coming on Megyn Kelly Show or going on Gutfeld, right? Like, in other words, I'm not in the least bit phased in appearing in front of millions of people. Now, I may be over exaggerating. It's not as though I'm in a fetal position, sucking my thumb and crying when I post my grades, but I'm really ruining the fact that there will be a few students whom I'll have to engage with and I'll have to explain why. Well, the reason why you received 0 on participation because you never participated in the class. So what is it that you expected other than 0? But that's not fair, sir. I was there in spirit. I really love your class. But yes, but I was grading you on participation and you never participated. So I can't make up a grade. Just like if I go see my physician and he gives me a cholesterol score, I don't negotiate for a better cholesterol score. It is what it is. But
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that we have, and frankly, it really gnaws at you, and it's one of the reasons where sometimes I look at my wife and I say, how much longer can I be doing this teaching stuff?
Yeah. One of our sponsors today is Donors Trust, the principled, tax-friendly way to simplify your charitable giving. Cancel culture does not just affect comedians and commentators anymore. It also affects everyday, hardworking Americans. How so? It can derail their charitable giving. Take Jeannie's story, for example. Jeannie did her charitable giving through one of these big national donor-advised fund providers. That is, until, without a clear reason, it refused to send her charitable dollars to a conservative nonprofit. This is happening more and more. Jeannie shares her story this way. I'm a conservative. I believe America's great despite her imperfections, and that capitalism brings great good to society rather than government, she said. Earlier this year, I requested another gift from my donor-advised fund, and it was rejected. Jeannie wanted a donor-advised fund that shares her conservative principles, and she found it in Donors Trust, the oldest and largest donor-advised fund committed to limited government, personal responsibility, and free enterprise. Imagine that. Do you want a principled partner helping you support causes close to your heart, one that's not judging you all the time and imposing their values on your donations? If so, consider opening a donor-advised fund with Donors Trust. For more information on how Donors Trust can help you with your charitable giving, visit donorstrust.org/MK to receive a free copy of their donor prospectus. That's DONORS trust.org/MK. Hey, thanks so much for watching. If you like what you just saw, hit the subscribe button for more clips and full episodes.